Welcome to Embrace the Spiritual Podcast. Join friends Michelle and Dawn as they share tips on how you too can open your heart, raise your vibration, and reclaim your sovereignty. Hear what they have experienced and overcome in their spiritual journeys while navigating this expansive spiritual multiverse. Discover how they transform their soul lessons from ordinary into extraordinary.
Follow, subscribe, and share Embrace the Spiritual Podcast on all streaming services, including YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Go to embracethespiritual.com for bonus content. To book a quantum energy healing session with Dawn, visit her website, alchemy-sacredsound.com. And to book a quantum energy healing session or learn Reiki or Tuning Forks, visit Michelle on her website at energeticembrace.com. Welcome back to this exciting episode. We have a special guest with us that we're so excited to talk to. I've had the pleasure of meeting her in person. I've taken an SRT basic course with her. I went in person, got to give this lovely lady a hug, and it was just magical. And got a spiritual restructuring training from her. And at time of recording, actually the day that it gets released, we're going to be in class doing SRT Advanced. And our special guest, Susan, is an SRT, I don't know, like guru doesn't even sound enough. She has been with the program pretty much from the start. She had the honor of meeting and working with the founder, Robert Detzler, directly. And she, like many of us, were corporate world first and had her own process of how that transitioned into kind of that spiritual perspective. So we'll let her expand on that a bit. And Dawn, what are we going to be talking with Susan about today?
One of my favorite subjects, healing trauma. And how amazing this technique that Robert pretty much created from, the divine, God, source, whatever you want to call it, and how he brought it down here to help us heal our ancestry, our lineage, and just even Robert, said in the future, things that we can look into since time does not exist. And I just love this technique. It is just so energetically, I can feel the energy moving so much. It clears indefinitely, like from the beginning of time through infinite. So what better technique could you have to use in your toolbox? So I did have a friend who had a panic attack. Susan, tell us how this can help us, because when we are having a panic attack or anxiety, how it can help us in the now moment. Because I think a lot of people have a hard time thinking, well, how is this going to help me, since they're so used to the conditioning of the, I need to go to a counselor for this and they need to put me on med.
Firstly, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I really appreciate it. And I've been blessed to have worked with both of these ladies and in practicing and in teaching as well. So I'm really pleased to be here, and thank you for all that you do for the community. It's so important that this be happening now, this communication. So many people are home and feel in some places alone. And does anyone else feel this way or know this? And we're blessed with this internet and these Zooms now to be able to really connect as if the person's in the same room. So thank you for having me. Big blessings to both of you. Thank you. System's called spiritual response therapy or technique, whichever. It's SRT for short. And it's such a powerful modality that supports every other modality. So if you're doing something, you found something that works for you, stick with it. It's not in replace of, it's in support of. Because if what we're looking at is soul programming, I say it's like going to the hard drive of the soul. Panic attack today could be triggered by an event of today, but it could be triggering a panic attack from the soul's memory from a past life. So it can be really exacerbated or exaggerated. And, you can address the present life, moment with your breathing or, whatever you found works for you, on some people medication or whatever it might be. But if the root cause of that remains, there's always that trigger. There's always that potential. And the beautiful thing about SRT is we go back to the roots. All right. So dealing with present life is like picking the leaves off of a tree. And there's a lot of leaves on a tree. It's a lot of opportunities for panic in the present life, right? or whatever it's going to be. But if you have had that experience in the past, maybe that panic was your village is under attack, or you're in a war zone, like something really, really, intense, then, the feeling that you're feeling today, you might say, what? Why am I getting so crazed? This is just this. Well, maybe it's not just that. Maybe it is impending doom and death that is in your Akashic records, that's in your soul memory. So the beautiful thing about SRT is it goes to the root. And by that, we go to the soul's records, because everything that ever happened to you, this lifetime, other lifetimes, this planet, other planets, it gets downloaded into your Akashic records. So I'm guessing a lot of your viewers probably know about the Akashic records, and that's probably another podcast for you with someone who's an expert with that. But I just see it as a database, and I'm blessed that when I do the sessions, I do see they do give me visuals. That's how I understand. You don't need to have visuals to do the work at all, because it's all in the charts and the information's going to come through, and spirit is doing the work. So in SRT, we use the term spirit for, as Dawn, like you said, God, spirit, source, whoever you pray to, whoever you believe that to be, but we use the word spirit. So that's the term I'll be using moving forward. That's the other thing. You might have blocks to healing. You might have programs to suffer. You might have a self-punishment program. So there's all different programs. They get filed. However the soul filed it. Different souls can file it differently. We just need to get into the correct file where you put that panic, freak out, heart race, whatever you're going to experience. It could be a benefit program from a trauma in the past. There was danger that you missed, and then you programmed in a benefit of have a panic attack if there's danger amidst, but it might not be true danger present life. So if we go back and we get it there, then you're not predisposed or programmed to it. And then you can work with your therapist if that's appropriate and necessary for practices in the 3D. It might completely go away if that's all that it was, right? So it supports whatever you're doing.
I think that the first time I had a session with you, I had a session with Carolyn, and then when I had signed up for the SRT basic course, because of course Carolyn recommended you to me, and when I had that session of things like self-punishment and those benefits, I was actually taken back, like for all of the work that I've done, Dawn has done, our listeners have done, we never truly know everything, right? So I love this technique specifically because it does go to the root. And when you do have those things, like I know some of our listeners, and I know I've been on that kind of hamster wheel before, where it's like, I'm doing all these things right, and I just can't get further. Right? Like
you're blocked.
Like it's like an invisible roadblock, but you don't know what the roadblock is. Could be concrete. It could be, a little bit pliable, but the roadblock is there nonetheless. And when we can use a technique like this to start removing those layers, because I think it's like layers, there's layers to healing, right? Once we can get rid of maybe some of those surface things that are those initial roadblocks, then we can get even deeper down into the root of what's going on. And I was surprised, but then in a way I wasn't surprised when I really thought about some of those self-punishment things. I'm like, well, if I took an honest look, yeah, I was actually doing that. It just didn't have a way to articulate that was going on for me. So in the short amount of time that we've known about SRT and had a few sessions, it's been profound, I would say. A lot of times, like Susan was saying, yes, it's complementary, but I think it even helps. I don't want to say necessarily just accelerate, but I think it has more profound impact and benefits with other modalities that you may be doing as complementary things, because it can get rid of so much in one session. If you haven't had a session with Susan, we're going to put all of her details on our podcast and on our website on embracethespiritual.com. It is worth having a session with Susan. Like, she goes so quickly. And of course, she's been doing this for, couple decades, and she's so young. I don't know how that's even possible.
23 years. 23 years, yeah.
Isn't that wild? It's not an either or. You could just do this and you're going to have amazing results. Intuitively, though, if you can have an SRT session, even if you only did one, you have set yourself up for success, because if nothing else, it has helped open, I would say, a door to looking at things a lot differently than I'd even looked. And I've done lots of work in the Akashic records, mostly pulling and getting information out of the Akashic records for people and using it for some healing, but not to this level. So I really like that it was connected to the Akashic records, and that's what really drew me to it as well. So I just can't say enough about it. And Susan also does couples. So my husband and I are actually going to have a session with Susan as couples. So we've each had individual ones, and we're going to do it together. So we're cleaning house, in our respective camps, and then collectively, what do we have together? So Susan's been able to do a lot of that work. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. And because at the end of the day, it's about our soul growing. That's what we're here to do. Our purposes could be all completely different, but we're all here to grow our soul.
Well, thank you for all of that, and so well put. And I want to say, you said like layers, and it's like peeling an onion. One topic will cover many areas. Someone will say, well, in relationship and at work and all this stuff. And we can go in, and it's almost like, like a Venn diagram, like where do they all overlap? Because of this, you're not succeeding at work, or, for instance, that people with lifetimes, people trying to open up to their gifts, to their practice, doing your modality, but you want to get out and actually begin your service to others. And at the same time, they're saying, I want to be in a relationship, but I just keep having issues with relationship. Well, we might go into past lives when this individual was a female and was practicing. The husband didn't support and had them institutionalized. So now here they're coming, not only are their gifts blocked, but they say, well, if I am going to do that, but I can't be in a relationship. So relationship is blocked. And you're like, why am I blocked in everything? I can't do either. Or maybe you do one and not the other. But if we clear that lifetime, boom, all of a sudden you're open to your gifts, to your practice, and to relationship. And karmically, right? Because a lot of the program is not just programming, it's beliefs. Because when you've lived and you've had hurt or harm, not only do you pick up discordant energies, which is the basis of SRT, we're going in to get the ingredients of your life or your discordant energy, right? And when we clear all those fear-based energies that are getting in the way that you default to, right? Think of it, you're on your computer and you're trying to do something, and it keeps defaulting to some old programming, and you can't get this document done. And you're like, what is going on? You have to go back and clear that old program. You have to upload the new updates, right? So it's the same thing with the soul. You're going back and you're saying, well, this is what I'm running on, this old fear. Or, husbands can institutionalize their wives because they read books. And society will say, oh, of course, we've got a room for her, right? So it's like, it's not like that anymore. But if the soul is acting as if it's still there because it's programmed, because of the intensity of what happened, right? Then you're going to be stuck. So you might say, absolutely no relationships because I'm here to do my work. Or, I can't do my work because I really want to enjoy a relationship. When in reality, the karma is, I'm going to incarnate in a time where not only can I do what I'm doing, I can have a loving, supportive spouse that either supports me or even maybe partners with me. That's the karma, is to learn from the past, heal the past, and then move forward in the present and expand on it. But when we default to our fears and false beliefs, then we're stuck and we're blocked, like you said, Michelle. And then the couples piece too, and you're so right that the couples, you always want to do yourself first. We all bring our own baggage, and a reason why this spouse, this partner, is helping us fulfill our programming, ideally our positive programming, but often our negative, right? So when we clear our negative program, I no longer need you to play that role to keep me in this role. Then you're free to show up. And if your partner does the same, then you can show up. And so that could be, your challenges could be largely in part due to your own individual programming. And then we incarnate as soul families. I'm sure anyone who's had any past life work done has found either you've been with your mother before, your father before, your spouse before. I mean, we tend to come in soul families. It's not every single lifetime, but we're often learning together. We'll swap roles, or we'll come back in the same role if we didn't get it right the last time, right? You were an abusive, non-supportive spouse in a past life. Let's come back and I'll give you the opportunity to support me, encourage me, and we'll heal this, right? But sometimes the veil drops, souls come in and they just fall to their old programming. But when we clear that, then you can go back and you can do what you came to do. The healing, the learning, the growth.
I do have a question talking about ancestry and stuff. Now, you do couples. Do you do family ancestry? I, like, for example, have stepped away from my family. My daughter pointed out that my side was not loving and caring and kind like we were. And honestly, it was more drama for us to show up at events for family than it was energetically worth it. Do you do clearing for, I know we come in for reasons to, clear and play out roles. For those of us who have stepped away from our families, do you do ancestry healing as well?
I'll start with a yes, that comes up. But the thing about SRT, the beautiful thing is we leave the spirit to triage. So that can come up in any number of ways. I mean, you might have something very specific with individual family members on a soul level basis, right? So we would go in and say, okay, what are the names of you and any particular person? And we'll make sure that you're cleared with that, so that when we get cleared with the soul, then we have two options moving forward. You're either neutral with them and you can release it. You don't have anything left, or you're healed with them. In both ways, you're healed with them, or you're neutral with them and you can move forward and build on that relationship. But if they were only in your life, if they're not going to change, then you're going to get neutral and let it go. If you clear it and you release them from that negative role, and all of a sudden, hey, they've shifted because you release them from a negative programming, well, then you might want to move forward with that relationship. But it gives you free will, right? It gives you that option to do that. But then sometimes what I'll do if someone has that, say it was you with this, I would put down, what is your role in the family? You're a daughter, you're a sister, because you might be carrying forward programming from in a family. This is the role when you're a female, when you're a daughter, when you're a sister, right? Because you might have that, and I'll put in family. You might have programming around family, period, right? So it's not just one thing, but the way that I do clearings is, I'll put down all the obvious. We'll test it before, we'll go through it together, we'll get there intuitively, and then you'll say, yeah, that feels right. And then we'll say, okay, Dawn, this is it. You came in with a family that doesn't seem to be suiting or a vibrational match anymore. So let's make sure, and you've done what you feel is the right thing, you've stepped away. But let's clear everything, because obviously this lifetime alone, there's wounding and we want to get that healed and taken care of, because this also does spirit applies healing, right? And for those psychic wounds. So psychic wounds are wounds when you're hurt by someone that you love, that you trust, not just a stranger. So it's an even more pervasive wound. And every time you think about it, it gets deeper and deeper. So we have to go back all levels, all layers. So it's very, to get the psychic wounds healed. So, you had said ancestral, I think. There's on one of the charts is called genetic beliefs. Now there's multiple ways that we get programs, and some of them, all that we've been talking about, are experiential, historical. Something in our soul's history and experience that we had has created energies or beliefs or contracts or vows that we're dealing with. There are programs that are actually inherited directly from the mother's egg or the father's sperm. And those are called genetic beliefs. They're usually in the form of beliefs. And if that is what you're doing, if you're carrying on perpetuating beliefs from your ancestral line, then we're going to go in. It'll be identified in the charts. Like I said, we don't have to ask about it. It'll just come up. And they'll say, hey, you got all the programs, you've got all that. But you know what? There's also something in the DNA from the ancestors that needs to be cleared. Well, we do the same thing. You don't just clear you. We're going to go back to the original ancestor, and we're going to clear the whole family line, right down to your children and your grandchildren and whoever else, the whole family line. So in that case, we'll identify, is it on your mother or your father's side, and how many generations back, and then go and do that and clear that ancestor. So the answer to your original question is absolutely yes, you will get that. How we get that depends on the individual souls, their experience, and their filing system, right? And I say their filing system because two souls can have the exact same thing happen. And one soul saying, this is all my fault and I need to be punished because they have this belief that they're responsible or whatever. They're going to file in under self-punishment, and their energies are going to be very different than someone who says, I was victimized, I'm helpless, I'm this. They're going to have very different, it's the same experience, which is why every soul's clearing is going to be different and totally personal, right? And sometimes, I'll just add on that, sometimes the self-punishment that you do is blocking yourself from your gifts, from that, in a past life, I misused my wealth. So I'm going to block money, right? And there's a difference between money and income, and that's in the charts, because a lot of people have no problem with the income, but they have no money. And a lot of people, it's just money, no money, period. So, it'll be interesting. First, Spirit will present what it is. But then when you go in, you'll go, oh, now I see the difference. Because we'll see that, like money and income, there's different things that we might think are similar. That's why this is so precise, that, because if you get the exact right piece, you pull that thread, everything else goes. So it's very, very efficient, because we go right to that point and then it's like a Jenga game. Like we pull out the right one, the whole tower comes down. Or you could sit and take all day playing, right? So, it's in this case, we get in, we get out. It's not about the story, although you'll get it, right? But that's why I'm very clear with people when they call or they'll say, I want a reading. It's not a reading. Information will come. These are not your sexy lifetime, right? We're going to go into lifetimes where there was hurt, where there was harm, where, you were hurt, or maybe you're not proud of what you did, but all the soul, you were just learning. And we've got to go back in and get that forgiveness. And when we clear all those blocks in the form of energy and beliefs, you don't have to do it again, right? How many people say, oh my gosh, this is the same relationship. This is like the sixth person I'm dating, and I'm playing the same role. They're all different. I thought I got a different guy, a different girl, different this one's got money, this one's good looking, whatever it is. But here I am playing the same role because it's your script, right? So once you get that done, then all the rest can clear.
I like that analogy of, pulling the thread, and because there's so many things that, we come in maybe to an SRT session with our preconceived notion of what we're actually kind of working on or what we feel that we need fixing. And it could be something completely different that layers. So I think that's really important in any healing modality that you're having a session on, is leave your expectations at the door, because the healing you get can actually be more profound than you even expected.
I would say to that, be open to more, like don't limit the universe with how you think it's got to be resolved. That's the conversation I had in the beginning with people. Perfect example. Someone came once and, she's like, I want you to clear me to get a new job, and here's the job, and blah, 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 blah. Like specifically, very specific. And I said, well, can I ask, what is it that you're looking for? Like, why do you want this new job? And then she says, well, in my company, my boss is holding me back and taking my credit, and, and I want more vacation days, but I'll never move, like all these reasons. And I said, so really what you want is freedom. Sounds like you want freedom. She said, yes, I wrote down freedom. And I said, it sounds like you want to be properly compensated. You want justice. You want, security. You want flight, like whatever the things were based on the conversation. And I said, well, why don't we clear for that? Because everything in your current job falls under that. But why say this is the only way I'm going to get that is in this particular job? And there might be something so much better for you. Well, it was interesting. She checked in with me. She happened to be in Sedona at the time. I was in Sedona. This was an in-person session. And when she went back, she emailed me and she said, you're never going to believe this. When I got back, my boss resigned. I was given his job. So she got the recognition, because I think I had on there recognition, freedom, security, money, like whatever it was. Everything was there, and she didn't have to change her job because she actually loved her coworkers, her commute. She had invested a lot of time in her career. She didn't really want to leave. She just wanted all these other things. And, so we cleared for that. Someone else, it could have been, I went back and I got a job offer from someone completely different. Or I met this amazing partner who's financially independent and swept me off my feet. I mean, there's so many ways to get what you want. And to limit the universe, is kind of being stingy with yourself. and taking a lot of responsibility. Like, just what do you really want? And sometimes big. And then there's other sessions that get really specific. It's very specific. It is this person, it is this mother-in-law, it is this father, it is this whatever. And there can be really specific. So it depends on what the soul needs and where you're blocked, what you want. And once we clear that all, you have all the wisdom and the knowledge from all your past lives that was blocked. You don't have to do it again. You don't have to date that person again. You've got the discernment. You recognize them a mile away. And you say, no, this is what I want. You call in who you really want, the job, whatever it might be. So you've got that wisdom. You don't have to do it again. It's like box check. They literally show me when I get my image as a transcript, the soul's transcript and the soul's curriculum. And I will see things move from the curriculum to the transcript as complete A+. Like the visualization, the way that spirit speaks to me, because I'm always like, give me an example, give me a picture. That's how I learned. So they do. But as I said, you don't need that. I didn't for a lot of my students will say, well, I don't see like you do. Well, I didn't for years, but it's faster now. And so many people joining my classes now are so far ahead of where I was when I started that it's just so much fun to work with them, because it's just like, oh my gosh, we're starting on like month 10 in my life when I was learning. And it's like we haven't even had lunch yet, so it's such a beautiful time for people to be jumping in on this. It's a really important time because where we're going, I don't know if you guys talk about the shift that's coming and where we're going with humanity and all that. But what I've heard and what I believe is the thing that would hold us back is karmic baggage. Like we just can't bring this baggage. And SRT is the most efficient, quickest way I know of. And I've been, on the path since 1995. I listen to everything. I read everything. I follow everything, whether I subscribe to it or not. I'm pretty aware of what's being said. And this is the easiest, fastest way to clear your karma without having to relive it, and go through it.
These last few episodes that we've talked about, I'm glad you brought up about the universe. We've continued to talk about that. Dawn and I probably sound like broken records. So it's always nice to have somebody else say that, the universe takes care of the how, because we can so easily limit and we think it has to be done a certain way. And that's based on our beliefs, our experience, our programming. But the last few episodes, we've talked about things like knowing your limits. Are you operating above capacity? Are your actions aligned with your intentions? Like the universe will let you know. They'll keep throwing in those lessons, as you said, that, okay, this is my 6th relationship. And clearly there's something in my camp that needs to be maybe worked on. And so one of the things I wanted to stress too is, we're talking about clearing these things. Sometimes your life might be going along tickety-boo, you're, manifesting like a dream. You can still benefit from SRT because, as Susan said, as we're moving into this, the 5D earth, as we're moving into this new way of being, we still have maybe these karmic things that aren't maybe showing up in your life right now, but they might show up. So it can be like a little bit of house cleaning as well. And maybe that's a question for you, Susan. Well, maybe a maintenance perspective. I know spirit drives a lot of this. Do you find that you have clients that are coming back just for kind of tune-ups, if you will, or what do you experience with that?
Well, it's funny you say that because, I see patterns with my session. I do, double-digit sessions a week. So I get to see it. And I'm blessed that I work with clients all over the world. So I have a great cross-reference sampling of humanity. And it'll come in waves where it's like, oh, all of a sudden everybody's all clear. There's a lot of people, like the majority of the sessions this week were family or marriage or children or this or that. At this end of the year, the last few weeks, it has been what I would call like cleanup. Like it's people that have been doing their work all along, and then they'll come and it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like they're kind of wrapping up stuff that they've been working on that they cleared for. So they were moving and they've been doing their work and they've been moving forward. And then it's just the little bits and pieces that are left. Like just, one life here, one life there in different folders. So it's kind of like a mop up on that. So that happens. There's also different topics. All right. So, people will come and they'll work on, like I said, it's levels and layers. So we'll start with that. It could be the same topic, and then you clear. And I'll use an example, assuming that maybe a lot of your listeners are practitioners of sorts. But like, it might be someone comes and like, gosh, I could feel like I'm supposed to be doing my healing work more in a more spiritual way. And very often people come in to do their healing work, but they fall into what was available. They're nurses, they're a massage therapist, you're doing it, but you go, I could feel I need to expand. There's a lot of expansion happening now. I want to expand. I want to do it in a bigger way. I want to ascend. I want to know more. There's ascension, there's expansion. So, we're going in different ways. And sometimes what is required for that ascension or that is to open to your gifts. And, I've had people in my class and they're intuitives for a living. And when we go in, they're only using like 70% of their gifts. It's like, when we open you all the way up, oh my goodness, like what you can do, the people you can help, And so a lot of times it's very typical that when we go into the clearing, it's past lives of being shut down, institutionalized, exorcised, burned at the stake, whatever it is for your gifts. So we might clear that. And then all of a sudden this person is out there and they're getting their gifts, they're getting their information and everything's going good, but maybe they're not actually out there practicing. They're like, well, I'm getting so much more information, but I'm not launching here. Like I'm still, geez, I know I want to do website or I know I want to do this. I just can't. And then we'll go back in because it's actually different. What it is going from opening to your gifts and connecting with spirit and having that knowledge and that support. Now it's to putting it into practice, going into service, being seen, being recognized, and then we'll go back in. So these are the layers. This is an example of the layers. So then you go back in and then you're working with them, and it's lifetimes of when they were actually doing healing and out there doing it. And probably same deal, institutionalized, persecuted, like whatever, killed, whatever it might be, heretics, source witches, you name it. Some people might say, well, didn't we clear that? This is different. This is not from hearing and things that other people don't hear, seeing things other people don't see. This is actually utilizing it. So this is practice. We get that cleared. People get out and they start maybe doing their practice. Then all of a sudden they'll come back and like, I've been doing it, but geez, I'm doing so many pro bonos and I'm not charging appropriately and I can't make a living and I want to leave my job, but blah, blah, blah. Then we'll go in and it's all about receiving that energy exchange for doing spiritual work, which most of us were priests and nuns and monks, and you didn't get paid back then. And there's a lot of religious beliefs, about vows of poverty and whatever it might be. And you need to get that. So we're now talking 3 sessions, could be over the course of a year, 2 years, to get this person to a point of where they're out there doing it. And because this is I'm kind of telling my story. And then it's teaching. Because then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm out there doing that. And spirit comes in. And I remember when they came to me and they said, it's time for you to teach. And a whole other level of terror and blocks came up. And it was like, oh my gosh. And I went back and I was like, didn't we clear these lifetimes? But it was from teaching, which was different than healing, which was different than just getting information and sharing it at home, right? So there can be multiple sessions and you think it's the same topic, but what it is once one's cleared, you can move to the next level. Once that's cleared, it's like climbing those mountains. I made it to the top of the mountain, then you see the next mountain. And like, okay, but I did one, but now I'm about to ascend to the next. So that would be, so people do multiples. So that's on might seem like similar topics, but then it could be, I'm here, to work on me and my career, or I'm here on my relationship. They could be completely different things that need to be cleared and require their own session. And Dawn, you were going to say something a while back and we took over. Sorry about that.
We're talking about something about energy changing. And I think my question was, do you do clearing for humanity for those who feel lost, haven't made the spiritual connection to look into to like help set up to find people like you, like their teams, like, yeah, we really want you to, you know, XYZ, meet this person, but you just need that little shove. Do you do things on, you know, to help humanity that way? I think that was what my question was.
Yeah. Specifically for someone to find me, no, not that, but for humanity as a whole, and also there's SRT community, you know, practitioners. And for instance, there's on Facebook, you know, you have to be a practitioner to be on it. But just yesterday, one of the practitioners, you know, went and she said, can we all do a mass clearing, you know, for Spain, where there's this flooding? She said, so many souls are displaced and lost and don't know that they're gone and everything. So, and I'm getting chills now because that's good. And then we all pick up our stuff. And if we all do it, mass. I mean, we were madly, along with so many other groups, clearing for the most recent hurricane in Florida. And look at how that changed. I mean, that was going to be devastating. And the prayers that were going on, then with us, the clearing that was going on. So yes, you could do it for groups. I will be doing it today for the United States and the elections and the aftermath, you know, for, you know, just everyone, no matter what happens, half of the country is going to be upset, right? So, you know, that's a perfect thing to do, is just to clear everyone to mass consciousness and humanity. So yes, and it's great when we do that in groups. I would love to eventually, and I'm thinking next year, like really get some coordination with the SRT community. You know, because you don't have to be a teacher, you don't have to be. I mean, if you're trained and you can practice, you can help. And, you know, we all come together and do that together. It's going to make a huge difference, as I really think is evidenced in that most recent hurricane, which was really, you know, taken down many notches and was a lot less severe than expected. And I definitely think that's a tribute to all the prayer circles and the clearings that everyone was doing with whatever they knew to do.
And I think you got it, because that's when I think about, you know, the energy and looking at it in a neutral, you know, like how can I help without infringing on anybody's free will, because we don't know what their soul contract is. And I just love that, you know, you do that. And SRT is a way of doing that to help, especially souls that get stuck that don't even know that they've passed. And that truly saddens me. We've had a couple of deaths here in my small community, and I know it's important to send them with love, because we don't want them to be trapped here since, you know, something happened and there is just so much grieving going on. And I know there's like that time period of where it's stay or go, and you don't want them to stay because they got lost in the transition. So I'm so happy that you mentioned that. Now, is that something that you learn in SRT, like the advanced SRT classes, or is that something that the community has come up with?
No, it's just everyone just doing a regular. It's just that your client in that case, or the person, is the hurricane or the people in Florida or whatever it is. And I love that you brought up the free will piece, because I had not mentioned, you know, we can do proxy sessions for people that, you know, that are not aware, but we always get the soul's permission, right? So it's always with the soul's permission. It's part of what we call prep to work. So when we start, there's a whole procedure of protection and getting the right high self committee on board, because that's who we work with, the high self committee. In this work, there's spiritual beings that work in the records. And then we interview. There's certain criteria. They have to be at the highest level of consciousness. They have to be free of their own programming, because these are souls that have been incarnated in the past. They're just working in spirit at the time, so they can have their own programming. So we, you know, like we just really vet them very well. We have very strict criteria, and we get our shields up, we get protected. And then when we go in, if it's someone that we don't know, we ask permission from their soul and from their high self. Do we have permission to work with you? You never just go in and work on someone. You know, like a spirit wouldn't do that. It would be ineffective. We couldn't if we wanted to. I actually have an agreement with my committee when I'm using my pendulum. I was like, if it's ever an inappropriate question or something that is what I call psychic snooping, right? Because we don't use this for, can you check on my husband and tell me if blah, 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 no, we can't do that. But, but then I'll say, well, we can check on you and see why you feel that way or are concerned about that, right? Because it's always comes back to our stuff, but we can get permission. It's more, can you work with my child who is struggling with this, and this? We get permission. Same thing with that. We would preface it in a way or avert, with clearing. I mean, people are in these zones, these war places, this situation, they will have their own reasons. So that's when we might get more general, without interfering with anyone's lessons or free will, clearing anything that's blocking them from, their highest good and what they came to learn and what they came to heal.
That's awesome. One of the questions I had, which I know the answer, but for purpose of our listeners, is there any topic off limits, so to speak, or that can't be healed? Like sometimes people think, we all have our own reality and our perception of the reality that we're living in. And so sometimes people think, this is just what I'm stuck with. Like nobody can help me. And let's face it, there's a lot of really terrible traumas that happen to people, and it's very sad. And part of it, whether it's in your Akashic records or part of your soul journey, I suspect you've probably seen the whole range of really extreme traumas to, something what may be considered minor, but is obviously a big deal in that person's life. I'm thinking that from a listener perspective, there are some people that maybe feel like they're at the end of the road as far as done all this work and I just can't work on this trauma, like some of those really severe things that I can't forgive this person because of the horrible things, maybe it was physical, sexual violence, whatever the case might be. So maybe if you could just share for our listeners how and why SRT can be so impactful and help even the most severe of traumatic situations.
Yeah, I want to go to in the very beginning. What you asked was, is there anything that can't be cleared? And I want to start by saying yes. Like not everything can be cleared with SRT. It depends on if the challenge is from past life or something like that. Like some things really are 100% present life, this or that. And there's also something called spirit level programs. So I had mentioned there's different ways of programming. So one being experiential, historical. What happened, others that might be genetic that are just programmed directly in. And then there's spirit level programming, soul level programming, which was programmed before the soul ever incarnated. I call it curriculum, right? So, the soul before they incarnated said, I want to learn. Like when we were in Bardo, right? Bardo is that place in between spirit before we incarnate. And in Bardo, we're looking at our past lives and we're looking at our soul's lessons and we're looking at what we want to accomplish and we're looking at who we have karmic contracts with. And we kind of plan out our life to say, I want to get this. Sounds like course selection before you go to college, right? Before you go to school. And you're picking things up. So that's the soul has done. So sometimes we can go in and we can get that, but they're saying, yeah, nothing happened. But you wanted to experience this because you wanted to learn about forgiveness. You wanted to learn about injustice or persecution, like the soul did that. That we can go in, it can be identified and it can be cleared, but it's not going to be going into a past life and saying what happened. It's just going to be say, I'm dropping this class. Like I overscheduled and I'm dropping this class, and we can do that. And then there's spirit level that spirit picked and, said like every soul needs to experience this and everyone gets it. So for example, one is like say race beliefs programs. Everyone needs to experience being a member of a minority race and experience persecution. Now the soul then gets to pick, am I going to do that by picking a gender or an orientation or a skin color or a class or a caste? Like the soul can very often pick it, but spirit's saying you gotta do that. And there's a lot to be learned there. And you also have to experience being a majority race and persecuting others, right? So there's certain things that you can't kind of get out of, but we can clear how it's been experienced. There's other things like exit plans. Sometimes the soul might say, you know what, I really did not learn a lot in my childhood and my adolescence, but I figured it out in a past life and my adulthood and everything was fine, but I got to go back in, but I don't want to stay any longer than a certain age. And they might program in an exit point that is not negotiable because it's not for their highest good. It's not what they want. So suddenly this person develops stage 4 pancreatic cancer and someone calls you for a clearing and you go in. Now, the program was to learn to receive or to learn whatever, a lesson. You might be able to do something with that. If it was that the soul said, I'm going to learn all my lessons by a certain age and then I'm going home to spirit, then you're going to say, can we clear? And they're going to say, no, right? So you can't clear this soul's, this being their exit, but you can go in and clear for comfort. You can go in and clear them with their, like you can do a lot with that, but it's not going to change the outcome at that point. But we've also gone in and worked with people that had, cancer, this and that, and things have turned around because the soul got the lessons and didn't need that experience. There are some things that can't, and then there's other things that are they just are. It's not going to be cleared. So not everything can, but I've seen so much clear.
I love that you mentioned that because it gives a deeper understanding that we do come in with knowledge that we don't have access to because we have soul lessons to learn. And this is what our soul wanted. And people forget that and don't understand, or they limit themselves by thinking like it's BS, like I try to talk to people and they say, no, that's that new age stuff that they're trying to, say that we have a choice before we came here. And we really do have a choice. And I love how SRT proves that you do set up in Bardo these things that you want to learn, and some things you can clear and some things as exit points you can't. And I love that you confirm that, because that is something that I've, tried mentioning to people and they're like, nope, I don't understand, that's new age woo woo. So thank you for mentioning that, because it is so important to open up our thinking, that we've been so programmed to think it's this way and this way only. Death is a horrible thing, and I don't see it that way. And it can be a beautiful gift that, we've shared our life with these people. And I always, wish them best when they've passed.
And sometimes if you can celebrate them, because I have not, and this is not my area of expertise, but, I have not read a single book about people that have had near-death experiences that have died and come back. I haven't found fear in a single one of them about death. It's more like, do I have to go back? And their angel saying, no, you're not done. You have to go back. With SRT, like we know that, and especially if you recycle, if you want to, although we are, I'm trying very hard with people to let this be the last incarnation that you have to have. And then let the future incarnations be like, I'm just going to go down, be an ascended master, or have a good time, or whatever, but we're here to learn. And that's the whole thing. It's like, Robert was a unity minister. So in his book, there's a lot of references to the Bible, but a very different metaphysical interpretation of what it is. And now I don't know if this was from one of the books or one of the classes I took, but, when he talked about, just the choice to incarnate. And he said, in the Bible, the fear-based interpretation of some humans, they ate from the tree of knowledge and then they were shamed and put on animal skins and were sent to hell. That's, brief oversimplification. But, Robert said, the eating from the tree of knowledge is the decision to incarnate. As the soul is in Eden, you were in spirit, everything's like easy breezy, right? And you're there. And then you say, I need to learn. So I need to put on the bodysuit and I need to incarnate. And the bodysuit, right, or the skins of animals in the Bible is, I'm going to incarnate, right? And then we come here and he called this hell, but not in that fear-based hell where there's trials, there's tribulations, there's, things that's how we learn, right? So it's just very interesting to see a different interpretation, because when you take the fear out of it and say, no, we're just decided, okay, it's time for me to take this knowledge that I have. Michelle, you mentioned forgiveness, which I find is the big thing with so many of the sessions that I do. So if I need to learn how to forgive, well, I need to go down, because it's real easy, even us sitting here talking to a girlfriend or a family member and say, you really got to just let that go. And you really need to forgive, or you're never going to get past this. Real easy when you're not the one that's had your heart ripped out or, something done to you, right? But it's a whole nother thing to actually do it yourself. And that's when we incarnate. And then we get someone that agrees to give us a reason to forgive. And little do we realize when the veil is dropped that this person is doing us this huge favor by playing the villain, and that doesn't mean that we forgive them now and allow them to continue that, because they have their reason for doing that as well, and that's the whole thing with forgiveness, because people tend to think that that's condoning it. Just because you forgive someone doesn't mean you're saying that's okay. It's okay what you did. It's not forgive and forget. It's forgive and learn. And separate yourself and say, and don't let it happen again. And say, thank you for the lesson. And, there's the door or whatever. So it's not disempowering. It's empowering to forgive, because as long as you're in that state of upset and, living in it, you're the one that's living in it. But if you can forgive and let it go, you're freeing yourself, So forgiveness, Michelle, I mentioned that, and that's a big one. And that's a big one that I get so many of the sessions. What do we need to do here? They have blocks to forgiveness. And then we go back, and man, I can sure understand why you have that, because you have been really hurt and victimized and all of that, but you're not a victim, right? And that's what we have to do. We have to clear all of that, get that truth there, get the person empowered, and then, get them moving forward. And then what you do with that is entirely up to you. Free will is restored, because the soul is responsible for their own healing. We're not healing anybody. Like, I would never call myself a healer. I facilitate healing for other people, because with a system that I'm pretty good at, that I've learned, and anyone can learn it, really.
Yeah. I think the best kind of quote or saying that I've seen around forgiveness, and I use this a lot when I work with clients, is without forgiveness, it's like drinking poison and hoping the other person gets sick. And that's really what you're doing, is you're poisoning your own body. You've already been hurt by it. Are you going to give them that power and, give your power away to that person and continue to hold that resentment? And instead, take back your power. If you need an SRT session to help you maybe find out some reasons, like a past life and your Akashic records, if something needs to be cleared. Because I know for me, from my personal experience, forgiveness has been a huge thing for me in this lifetime. And it would be easy to run away from a lot of those situations. The hard thing is to stay and learn the lesson, do the work. And like you say, it still might be, thank you, goodbye, or thank you, let's keep going. And that free will is that part of it. So I really like that, because I think, and I want to go back quickly to your point about, people choosing their exit points, because that's another place where people don't necessarily see it as something that is a forgiven, but they get so angry when their loved one comes down with a life-threatening illness or disease, or, the past few years, what we've been dealing with, how many people chose that as their exit point to leave, 3 or 4 years ago, showing us the lesson in that. So even if you've lost a loved one, that, is kids is a big one. I think, right? There's a lot of children that, as we know, when I'm just getting goosebumps, kids that come in that are they're connected. They're still connected to what their soul remembers. And sometimes it is just for a short period of time. So sometimes we hold on to that regret and anger because, yes, it is crappy. No child should ever predecease their parent. There's a lesson, and sometimes we need the assistance of someone who can facilitate that healing for us, like what SRT does. So I think there's really, I guess the message for our listeners is there really is no one topic that, this technique can handle this. Yes, they kind of have their place for things, and maybe it's an in-between maintenance, but SRT, I've just loved it. I mean, Dawn and I have talked about this so much that we've just loved it from the first time we connected with it. It's like, this makes sense. Like, it's almost simple. Like, that's how I felt. It was like, this is just a no-brainer. And like, we all should be doing this.
Yeah. And pretty much everybody that has a session because it doesn't always make sense to me. I'm just eavesdropping on it. Once I'm doing it, I'm just a channel, and I'm hearing, and I'm learning a lot from what's going on. But I'm thinking, those are unusual energies to go with that, or geez, that's a little bit of a kooky lifetime that came up. And then I'll be done in person. It's like, oh my goodness, that's exactly my life. That's my relationship with my mother. And sometimes spirit will say, you need to know that this person in the past life is your mother now, is your child now, is whatever, and your boss now. We don't go looking for that, but if it's significant and it aids in the healing for the person, the understanding, right? Because the healing comes when we understand and we learn. So if that makes sense, like, oh my gosh, yes, gosh, my father was this way, and then my boss was this way, and then my husband is this way, and like I said, it's like 3 relationships, and you are still playing the savior or the messiah or the victim. It's like, wait a minute. Is it them, or do I have some programming here, with primary cast members in my life, or the men in my life, or everyone in my life, like whatever it is, and then we can go in and find that. And it's pretty amazing to see what it is, and for people to just really resonate with all the energies. Because even I've had people that don't believe in they'll say, well, I don't really, I'm not sure about this past life. And I'll say, well, just listen to the energies that come up, just listen and see and they'll be like, oh my gosh, yes, that's 100% my present life. Well, do you need to know, when you bring your computer to, to the Apple store or whatever, what they did, or just you got the results, right? And you're like, oh, now everything works the way that I need it to work, so if you want to say, yeah, I don't believe that in the past life, blah, 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 but that's where we got it. We could have done just present life, got the same stuff, but you wouldn't have the same results. So people can suspend their judgment and do that. And that's usually only people that someone got them a gift certificate, because usually, like, I'm 100% referral. So, I've had people say, like, what do you do with the difficult clients and this and that? I don't have them, because I don't, like, spirit brings them. Someone that's ready, and this is the work, they're going to come.
And I love that, because you are brought to the people that you need to help, and it's all divinely timed. And I love that, because I help the elderly. I do senior care, but sometimes it's hospice care. So I know that I'm holding space for my clients in whatever way that I'm meant to be there. And I can see that I've read Robert's books, the programming that they don't even realize that they've fallen into. And I always, when I go on my job, I have a difficult client, but she's like, the rest, they all have their idiosyncrasies. And I always say when I'm there, I know I can only do so much. Please guide me what I can do to make them most comfortable in the time that I have with them. And if people knew how they could help their loved ones with this, that have, lost their minds or are so wrapped up in their programming, it would be such a benefit to, those that don't have or don't understand the spiritual connections that we all have to each other. So I just love this. And I try to use, Robert's teachings in, a neutral way, as minimally as I can. But I think what you do is just absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you. And thank you for what you do. That's beautiful. And I wouldn't be surprised if you don't have soul relationships with some of the people that you're helping. And that's the thing. We have that too. The people that come to us and that we serve, very often they took care of us in the past, or perhaps we didn't support them in the past or caused some harm. And it's a beautiful, again, my belief on karma is it's not about repeating. It's about learning from the past and either fixing it or reclaiming your power. Some of us getting forgiveness.
One of the last questions I have, Susan, is what kind of general advice, I guess, or things that our listeners can do if they maybe already had a session or maybe even prepping, wanting to have a session, is what can people do in the meantime to maybe stay as clear as possible? So when we do have these sessions, we do a lot of work to clear, but there's also some habits, I guess, that we fall into, whether we're telling the story, which kind of reinforces what we just got rid of. So is there kind of some general things for our listeners that can give us the benefit of the work?
Yeah. So it sounds like, I think there's a couple of different questions in there because we're looking for people that haven't had sessions and people that have, but it's pretty much, I would say a lot the same. I mean, what I do personally, the big thing is to not fall into beliefs that aren't truths, right? Because we'll say that I can't do this, or this always happens, or, whatever it might be, I'm not, whatever these statements. I always say to people, if they're in my presence, I'll just say, is that true? And I'll say that to myself, is that true? Like, is that true? Like, is that true that I can't do this, or that, the world is whatever, whatever it might be, because just invite that to look a little different. Because when we just subscribe to beliefs that are limiting or negative, or habits even, like I'm addicted to sugar. I mean, are you? Like, really? Like, is it really difficult? Do you love it? Have you been doing this? Programming, certainly, there might be some programming in there. I had a woman yesterday, it was a sugar addiction. And oh my gosh, I went back to a lifetime. She was owned a sugar plantation. And like, there's a sugar cane place. Like there was a whole really programming around it, but I would certainly start with a lot of stuff we just automatically say and believe because it's always been, and it's our story, and so much programming. It's not what happened. It's the story that you attach to it. And with the story come the energies. And if the energies are fear-based, they'll get downloaded. So I really watch the stories, and we all have history. We've all had trauma. And not to discount that. It's a matter of how much energy are you going to give it, because it really is the energy that we give to a situation that is actually voluntary in a lot of situations. I'm a big fan of saying cancel. I'll say stuff, and then I'm like, wait a minute, cancel that, and make it more empowering, right? So I mean, simple little things like, I want this, whatever it is. And then I'll always say to people, add or better, right? So, I want to have this, and this, or better, because don't limit the universe. This is it. I'm always picked up. I'm always whatever. And I'll say to people, until now. And because you're stating to the universe, I'm done with that. You're not negating that it actually happened. You're just saying that's what it's been like up until now. And now it's changing, and make those statements. I mean, everybody, I'm sure you're listening, the law of attraction. It's like what you say, watch what you say and reverse it. Pay attention to your thoughts. You have power over your thoughts. Maybe not the first one, but what you do with it. And can you change it, and do that. Cancel. How can you look at that better? How can you rephrase it? If you're creating your universe to whatever extent you can, take that power, and then realize there is a lot that you came in with that is in your records, and get a clearing, because once that's cleared, then you can do it. It won't be so difficult. It won't be so hard, because you've got that path. But sometimes if the programming's there, I had someone, an alcoholic, we cleared, they had extra souls that were absolutely in possession, and they were drinkers, and working through them. They had health abuse programs, desire to suffer. They had past lives of alcoholism. Like there's a whole lot of programming that had them predisposed and on that path. We cleared all of that. And then the client said, so I'm not an alcoholic anymore, And I said, well, you still had a drink at 7:00 in the morning. You've still been drinking all this time. Now, though, if you do your meetings or whatever you choose to do, then you will be able to be successful. But with all that programming, probably wasn't going to happen. So there are things that absolutely can block it, and you're just not going to get through. It just makes it easier.
I'm so thankful that you came on today. Today was like a really important day, that we do this.
We just want to say, thank you so much for coming on. She's gifted her time to be on this podcast and share the information. We're extremely grateful for that, and has made the space to share this beautiful work. We will, as I said, have all your information on our website and as part of the podcast.
She does have classes that she teaches as well. She is going to be posting probably in December her 2025 classes. I will be taking some, so I'm super excited. Ooh. And I can't wait.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to teach you, to share with you. I want to say teach, to share the information with you, because Robert had said, and I believe it because I've seen it, anyone that takes the class has done the work before. So we're really just opening up those memories, updating it, new operating systems, things like that. So It's, I said, it's a lot of fun. I do have some other stuff coming up in 2025, so I'm going to be offering fewer classes, but I'm going to try and get in at least 2 basic and 2 advanced in 2025, because this is really needed right now, and it's everyone is really quite ready for it too. So thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate that. And thank you, ladies. This has been wonderful. I so appreciate you having me and all that you do. And it's been a real honor and a pleasure. And thank you to all of your listeners too.
Follow, subscribe, and share Embrace the Spiritual podcast on all streaming services, including YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Go to embracethespiritual.com for bonus content. To book a quantum energy healing session with Dawn, visit her website, alchemy-sacredsound.com. And to book a quantum energy healing session or learn Reiki or Tuning Forks, visit Michelle on her website at energeticembrace.com.
Infinite love and gratitude. Thank you for joining us.